This is my third attempt because of the unbelievable stupidity of Google and YouTube people. My third attempt to get the same goddamn video up on their stupid software. You know, after $1 billion in sales, you would think they could hire somebody with a brain to do their interface. What happens if you get a video that's a second longer than their 15-minute limit is they give you no option to edit it down under the 15-minute limit. They just throw it away. So your 15 minutes of work is gone. Morons. Well, anyway, never mind how stupid Google is. We knew they were stupid because of their little boys with their hormone problems, their little database promotion of everybody. It's a kind of Stalinist tyranny to work there. I've got employees working there from my research seminar, and they report to me, and Stalin's Russia and Google are a nice working environment. You can have a lot of bean bags and a lot of great sandwiches at lunch, but if you've got a data tyranny for new project proposals, you're not going to have any innovation. You're going to be Microsoft faster than Microsoft became Microsoft. So let's look at the topic of this. This is about interfaces, intellectual tools, putting some of them together in an interesting way. And I'm going to start with publishing of readings industry. Imagine where executive summaries of the Harvard Business Review are a demonstration that the people doing the summaries are morons, that the people, CEOs that want them are morons. And you can actually measure using Kinch's and Bonnie Myers and Toyn Van Dyke's theory of macrostructures, which is the basis of reading tests for the GRE verbal, the SAT verbal test to get into the world's best colleges. You can use that theory to measure the number of main points that are covered by the executive summaries, and guess what? It's less than 2% of the main points of the article are hit by those stupid executive summaries. So the CEOs are operating at a level of 2% of the content that's there for them to understand. No wonder they spend all their time stealing money instead of making anything. Publishing a reading industry is where you would create readings that are better understandings of what the author wrote than the author had. Now, if you know artificial intelligence discourse processing research, this is not a surprise. This is obvious that most good readers get a better understanding of what the author's intended points were and actual points were and how they are named and misnamed than the author has. The author generally, only a few genius authors can do this at one writing. But authors really have to write 3 times. The first time to find out what their own thinking is. The second time to organize it out of chaos. And the third time to express and deliver that organization to an audience. Most people don't write 3 times. And they try to do all 3 of those in one mental operation, and they're not good at it. And they do a bad job of it. So most readers see a structuring to the thought and to the way thoughts are named and to the geometry of how thoughts are organized that the author never notices. And so you have readings that are better and clearer by far than the original writing. Now we have what's called derivative work copyright laws that get in the way of people publishing readings that are better understandings. So you end up with Harvard Business Review crap. But there's a way around that in that good readers actually redo the naming of points. And they actually reorder the points. And they do a better geometry for the points than the original author did. And now that's new work, according to copyright law. And so I'm going to be looking for someone to fund me to create a publishing of expert and classic readings of text. And there are about 20 of them that I've devised in a book I wrote as an MIT undergraduate years ago. Number 2, replacing prose. Prose is a horrible interface. We know it's a horrible interface because if you're good at finding the points in prose, really good at finding the points in prose, you go to Harvard. Prose is an interface, and only the world's smartest people can use it to get the points. Oh, you couldn't prove how bad it is any more effectively than that. We use your ability to find points in text in prose to test for who should go to the world's best colleges. If you can find points in text in prose text, you get to go to the world's best colleges because the interface is so bad most people can't. I'm replacing it with fractal page forms, and I got lots of other videos and stuff on that, and read my books. Social automata. This is the missing micro level in organizations. This is simply that we have this huge pile of structures and dictatorial crap in Anglo cultures and more democratic stuff in Northern Europe and in East Asian cultures, and then totalitarian stuff in Chinese culture. The leader has to always be better than everyone reporting to him. So we have all these giant structures above in society, but they're all based on meetings and discussions which fill our hours all day long. So that micro level is just a swamp of chaos. See all this impressive monkey territory stuff, so the rich guys can rip off everybody and steal the money and go, have boats and buy prostitutes and play with retired Italian prime ministers. It's based on this crap that goes on all day long. So what if you use social automata? which are inspired by machine computers, are algorithmic ways of organizing people and work in meetings and discussions. If you do social automata, then you make ideas and emotions and persons actually interact and build on each other, rather than having them just sort of view and ignore each other as they do in brainstorms and ordinary meetings and discussions. Number three, number three, tactics for measuring the impact of devices on the amount of socialness that a group has. And if you look at how leaders impact groups and how devices and all this technology that connects people impacts groups, and you find out it doesn't. Most leaders and most devices and Facebook have absolutely no improvement in the socialness of a group. And we can measure the socialness of a group in terms of how many of the aspects of people's needs and values and priorities. I'm deliberately fuzzing the actual categories there because they're proprietary. How many of those do you know and act on in a group? Now, guess what? High performance groups at 22%. Boy Scout trips average 7%. World famous global corporations average 3%. This is why you can go into someone's room for 5 minutes. Recent research shows, and predict their behavior and attitudes much better than you can by working with them every day for a year. So the amount of personness allowed at work is so small, especially in Western cultures, that you're working with stranger all the time. There's just no socialness at work at all. You have a lot of people around a room and no interaction of the people involved at all. That's a measure of the degree to which the monkey hierarchy crap drives out the humanity and the brain power of a group. Brainstorming drives out the humanity of a group in the same way, because research has proven conclusively over a 30-year period, and the stupid Kelly and IDEO ignores this, that it allows a subvertitious hierarchy so that the leader dominates the group through body language in a brainstorming session. And boy, IDEO sessions, you look at the videotapes of them that Stanford D School has, and they're just hopelessly tyrannical. And no wonder IDEO has such unoriginal products. Throw a forest ranger into the brainstorm. Yeah, right. The genius idea of Kelly. Only Stanford would fall for that crap. But they had the D School for 40 years, so they didn't know much about brainstorming from the beginning. 64 dimensions of the culture of devices and the culture of users. Let's have 64 dimensions of the culture of an iPod 4S, 64 dimensions of the culture of the Galaxy 3, 64 dimensions of the culture of the users of the iPod 4S, 64 dimensions of the culture of the users of the Galaxy 3, put them in 8 different matrices with each other in combinations, and guess what we can do? We can predict new version features, sales success, and pricing. Now, we haven't got the 90% correlations we would like yet, but we don't have good data yet. Since we good data, we're going to have some real financial power. Now, I move people in 2 steps because the reason this is revolutionary is that everybody uses Hofstede's 40-year-old 8 dimensions of culture because they're lazy, mentally lazy and academically lazy. And they don't realize how unbelievably biased his sample was. And they don't know statistics. I taught statistics at the University of Chicago. They don't know that you can make any relation you want out of any data set simply by choosing your sample differently. And so sample choice effects are overwhelmingly more powerful on your results than your correlational methods are. And academics pretend it's otherwise. And so they are sloppy about how they sampled, and then they use great correlational methods, and they are impressed with their stupid little effects. And then none of them work when you apply them, like Amoeba Lee's creativity model when the TNG applies it. No result. Copying a Japanese product 8 years later is what Harvard calls creativity. Right. I call delayed copying. I don't call it creativity. Harvard calls it creativity because their standards are low. They don't understand the statistics they're using. Harry Roberts, my mentor at Chicago, has his last paper before he died really demonstrates that. But at any rate, I move people in 2 stages to 64 dimensions from Hofstede's foolish 8 dimensions because I'm not lazy. And then I move them to 192 dimensions. And boy, do we get power in terms of specifying next version sales success and pricing when we move from 64 to 192 dimensions of the culture of a device, the culture of users or buyers of a device. Idea factoring. This is such a big hitter. Idea factoring is a process that we do 2 to 5 times a minute. 2 to 5 times a minute. So 120 times an hour. So maybe 300-400 times an hour. And we do it all day long, constantly. Idea factoring. Now, what is idea factoring? We have 3 and 12, and we factor out the common element 3, leaving a 1 and a 4. So the unique elements fall out, and we have this common element above. That's number factoring. Now, idea factoring is Russia and France and war. And you get Hitler, Napoleon, and defeat by climate. Now, see that? You see that? Everyone in the world eventually gets that when you test them. That is the common associating element in the mind of the world on those three words. And then there's secondary associations you can pull out too. But that's the primary association in the mind of the world when you test populations. And the ability to just have Russia, France, and war, and then pull out Hitler, Napoleon, and climate as a cause of victory or defeat, that's called idea factoring. And people who are good at it get those brilliant IQs. And you can train it and move your IQ vastly up. It's the biggest single way you can change your IQ that's been measured. I don't have time for more on it now, but it's something you use hundreds of times an hour. And if you get better at it, and 2 hours of training is enough to double it, your idea factoring ability. 2 hours of training every day for 2 weeks is enough to double it. And I've got some executives I've done this to, and people start taking notes who used to interact with them as equals. And it becomes a marriage problem. And the only solution to that is give the training to the wife and the kids. And if you give it to the kids, guess what? It will move their IQ more than anything else. It's probably the biggest, highest leverage single thing you can do to get them into the world's top colleges. It's called idea factoring. I'm the only one in the world who teaches it. It is so mundane, nobody else pays attention to it. Math, it determines your ability to spot horizontal, lateral relations in different fields. Pattern matching ability of the mind in general is what we're talking about when you talk about idea factoring. And naming the patterns you see so that they can go out to other people and be used. Mass invention and research events. This is like replacing classes. And you know, you have one class a week for 15 weeks. That's really just to protect professor jobs. It's not an effective way to teach it all. It's much better to have once a month a 12-hour day where you hit the library and the web to do document work to build models of all the ideas in the field and who the best people in the institutions are in the field. And then you divide all of those institutions of people into 3 layers, and then you do Skype interviews of the peripheral people first with your beginner questions. You build new models and maps of ideas, and then better questions, and then you go to the middle people, and then you build new questions and models and maps, and then you do the world's expert people with Skype interviews at the end of the day, and then you end up with a 500-page book that's the best book in the world on that topic that you've built in one day yourself with 12 or 20 people. And it's so motivating, you learn so much, and it's the best book in the world. You can sell it, and you build it in one day, and it is the best in the world. Now, industry's been doing it in some places for quite a few years. I have no idea what colleges do. I do it, but, you know, people accuse me of being lazy as an excuse to not teach. Yeah, because, you know, it's better, and it's more hours, actually. I'm teaching more hours that way. The kids are learning a hell of a lot more, and we can sell our homework. 64 functions of all arts. I built this model by interviewing 150 great artists and 100 people who said that they were greatly affected by art. And we ended up with 64 functions of all arts. And now we can use that to measure the greatness of any work of art, predict the auction prices of works of art, and then to actually tell artists in mid-process what to add that actually increases the greatness of the work of art. And then we can make arts prescribable in terms of how much of which kind of arts are needed by a person to move their life toward well-being. Isn't that cool? I'm going to make some big money on this when we finish publishing it. Parts of it. Cures for the bushiness of the world. There's a gap in terms of more and more inputs going into the world's knowledge and web. And those inputs are getting bushier and bushier, less structured and formed. And then both of those are growing exponentially faster than search engine power is. And so the gap between stuff there and using and finding it and making value out of it, turning it into knowledge and action, is getting bigger and bigger. And we need tools for inputting less bushy crap into the web. I'm building them. Okay, and I don't have time for my other points, so we'll do them in some other video.